Welcome to the Carnivore Cast, the podcast focused on the carnivore diet and lifestyle, with practical advice from successful carnivores, citizen scientists, and top researchers. I'm your host, Scott Meslinski, and I'm here to speak with experts and experienced carnivores to get answers to your biggest and meatiest questions while helping you live your best life as a carnivore. Ash Simmonds, at Carnivores Creed or High Stakes on Twitter, is a long-term carnivore, nutrition BS dispeller, science synthesizer, internet personality, and computer programmer. Ash is the author of the Amazon bestseller Principia Ketogenica, a compendium of science literature on the benefits of low-carb and ketogenic diets. He also authors highstakes.com, a wiki and treasure trove of ketogenic and carnivore information, as well as his personal blog, ashsimmonds.com. Ash, thank you so much for coming on. I know you're not a huge fan of labels, but thank you for originally getting me started on a meat-first diet through your low human interference diet post back in 2014. We were just chatting about it, but if you could just start by describing for folks, what do you mean by low human interference and what kind of inspired that post?
Well, yeah, and thanks for that amazing intro. I did not write any of that. Just in case anyone was wondering. Yeah. So, low human interference, it just, you know what? It actually came from some, I don't know, it was something stupid like a green tea extract or something like that study that I saw way back in the day. And I was like, hang on. So these people who were doing this thing with their green tea had this amount of stuff happening to them, and it's like, okay, so then there's cholesterol, and then there's things like this stuff you spray into your arms, antiperspirants and things like that. Why are we spraying that to stop ourselves from sweating when sweating is the perfect remedy to getting hot and things like that? And then that it just sort of went from there to, okay, why are we taking these drugs to stop cholesterol? Like, in the end, the sciencey bits is when we're cutting off the mevalonate pathway and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, hang on, there's something wrong here. There's too much interference in our world. And then I started looking at food and I was like, oh, yeah. And anyway, so I weaved my way through to around, somewhere around the 2010-ish era to sort of go where, yeah, the least amount of stuff you can do to a piece of thing that you're putting inside of you or on you or doing in the world in general is probably closest to best. Like, there's no such thing as perfect, but whatever fits the paradigm of your existence and your life kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. And I love how you're not dogmatic about it either. You say there's no such thing as perfect, Ash. And one thing I've heard you describe is, you're not sort of the purest carnivore, but you talk about plants as flavor. Can you explain what that means?
Well, sure. So, look, I'm not going to say I have not gone through the dogmatic process. I've called it out a few times. I've probably been a bit snarky a few times when I see it coming around, because the whole carnivore thing has just really blown up in the last couple of years. And, you don't want to be like, oh, I was hipster, all that sort of stuff. But it's kind of like, I know, if someone sees an onion on my plate that I put on Instagram or something, it's just like, oh my God, dude, you're not carnivore, you're out of my club. I don't know, but it's just really weird nowadays, where back in the days it was like, oh, where's all the veggies on your plate? And I'm like, what's what the cow ate, man? So, so anyway, yeah, the point being there is that so my anti-dogmatic stance is just toward, I really do believe that everyone should do a complete elimination diet as far as they're able to, which is to say, go to the stuff that we talk about here is have your beef, your meat, your salt, water and stuff like that. But the thing is, there's a lot more to life than that. However, just eliminating everything except for those things can make you realize what other things there are in your life that you're putting inside your body that are just not really working for you. It's not until you start reintroducing them on a smaller scale that you're like, oh, actually, this actually improves my life somewhat. It might be a mushroom, might be an onion, might be a bit of garlic, whatever. Might be even the occasional piece of freaking bread. But for the most part, base your life on what you can do every single day, and then just add the other bits that add flavor to your life. So whether it's food, whether it's life, whether it's sex, whether it's everything,
Yeah. That's a great philosophy, and I like that approach. And Ash, what has made you so interested in nutrition and nutrition science to pursue it outside of your day job and go down some of these kind of rabbit holes and uncover things for yourself and others?
Well, it's hard. It's difficult to actually say that I'm interested. It's just that I was doing it for myself, and then it just sort of spread out around me because I just heard so much of the crap other people were talking about, and I'm like, no. So, okay, you mentioned job sort of stuff, so I'll very briefly talk about that. I'm a software engineer, and I super analytical. If someone says, something's not working for some reason, like in software, there's no such thing as like, oh yeah, because a bunch of people said this, that's why it's not working. No, there's a very freaking specific reason, and you have to fix that. It's cut and dried pretty well, So anyway, I applied this logic to when I was having my own issues all that time back, and it was just a matter of, the stuff that they're saying doesn't stand to reason. So anyway, I'm not scientifically trained. I'm not any of that. So I don't hold myself to any of those standards. But the thing that I think that people like me and, you've probably interviewed every one of them, but yeah, that was, let's just put it down to Ivor Cummins, right? He's another analogy of me where he's gone through all of this and then decided, no, I'm gonna read all the same stuff that these people are reading, but do it with a brain that isn't biased toward anything. And it's like, oh yeah, well, none of the shit you're talking about makes sense. So
yeah, I love that systems engineering approach and being able to really dissect things and take an unbiased review of just the science and the facts, and without having any influence, like you say. And who have been some of your biggest influences? I know you wanted to start from a blank sheet of paper and have an unbiased approach, but as you've read more and more, who has influenced you in terms of ways of thinking, or really well articulating and aggregating the science? I know you've written a lot about TOBS, but curious who else would be up there for you?
Oh, it's a massive hodgepodge. So a lot of this comes down to just not so much the nutrition stuff, which I know this is what the primary interest of this is, but just I've been super deep analytical on everything since day dot. If you would have asked me this in 1997, I would have told you all about Goto Bach, which is it's all about some, the philosophy and music and artistry and stuff about what's down the rabbit hole. Like literally, that's it's Alice in Wonderland. I'm not sure if you're aware of Gödel and MC Escher and Bach. Obviously, you've heard of.
I think I've heard. I think I heard of that in Seeking Wisdom. About Charlie Munger. I think they mentioned that in the beginning, or some other book, but yeah, go on.
Right. Yeah. No, it's in I can cite like the 3 billion books on that sort of stuff. But, they sort of culminated around the mid to late 2000s, when, I don't know, hashtag paleo was becoming a big deal. Well, actually, Twitter was only just really starting 2009, 2010 and stuff like that. But back then we were just all going all over the blogs. And actually, one of the great influences of me would have to be Kurt G. Harris. Are you aware of him? He's probably before your time.
No, I'm not sure.
Right. So Kurt G. Harris, he had a blog called Archivore. Might have been .org, whatever, but it's long gone now. And he was a massive influence on the whole thing. Like, he tried to start a new thing called Paleo Nu, like NU, and he defined a whole new system of thinking about fats. And I really recommend that one. I've actually archived that on High Stakes because it's a super important piece of literature. It really explains how the different kinds of saturation and monounsaturation, blah, blah, blah. And it's basically called, there's no such thing as a macronutrient. So put that down in the show notes to Google. No such thing as a macronutrient, Kurt G. Harris.
I'll link to that.
It's freaking amazing. And this is from about 2010-ish, I guess. And also other guys like Knowles.org. That was another one that was back in the day, and is probably defunct now. I'm just going to look at that. I've got my laptop in front of me. Knowles.org, because last time I haven't heard of him for ages. Yeah, account suspended. This is really unfortunate. There will be many people who are annoyed by hearing this. But yeah, so Knowles is GNOLLS.org. He had this fantastic article that he called Eat Like a Predator, Not Like Prey. And it was basically a 12-step program for getting off of stupid food. It's like, getting away from seed oils and seeds in general. Like, that seems to be the general thing. And then, you can have your veggies and stuff like that, but figure out all the rest of the stuff before you try to really fine-tune things. But yeah, Knowles.org was another big one back in the day, and all the big people like Zoe Harcombe and all the usuals. They used to refer to this guy all the time, but he's disappeared.
Yeah, that's excellent. I'll link to that. And for folks listening, the show notes will be at carnivorecast.com/podcast/Ash. And and Ash, how long have you been eating this way? And what is kind of, I know it's a overused trope, but what does a day of eating look like for you?
Okay, so yeah, we've already spoken about my lack of specificity with the definition of what I do, just that I'm as less interfered as possible. So, there's a lot of wine and stuff in there. But I think one of the things that sort of separates me from a lot of what's going on in all this is that I never came from a toxic food background, really. So to try to make this short, I grew up, country kid mostly, and with just the general three meat and veg kind of thing. It was mostly just lamb chops and maybe a bit of potato and stuff like that. Occasionally we'd have bread and margarine on the side and blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, we were a pretty poor sort of family and just grew up mostly on what the cheapest meat, and usually the fattiest, nicest stuff was. And so from there, once I moved on and started living by myself, I was like, what's the fucking point of making all these vegetables and stuff like that? So, I'm talking in the 90s. It wasn't a conscious decision, like a health decision or anything like that. It was just a matter of, yeah, well, look, I'm living by myself. I've got a fridge full of chops, like lamb chops. And I'm just going to eat those. And so I've been, I think, okay, let's get to the point. I've been intermittent, zero carb for pretty much most of my life. But there was a large period where, I'd be in relationships and we'd do a lot of, eating out and stuff like that. And it involved a lot of pasta and bread and stuff like that. And I get really, really fat. The catalyst, I know, I think everyone's got this story, but luckily mine isn't too terrible like all the other ones that I read on all the stuff that's just churning up to the surface now with all these other people coming into the hashtag carnivore movement, whatever it is. But yeah, mine wasn't super terrible like that. It was just a matter of, this is in, 2006, I think I had my first gout outbreak. I had no idea what it was at the time. I just woke up one day and I thought I'd broken my foot in a drunken incident the previous night. But no, I'd just been drinking a lot of heavy beer and eating Chinese food with lots of HFCS in it and stuff like that. So, and yeah, finally, and okay, and the problem there is that I was in my mid-20s and I was like, oh, I've got an old man's disease. I'm in my mid-20s. What's wrong here? So I made it my life's mission because I tell you what, you can have everything in life, all that sort of thing, but if your knees don't work, if your feet don't work, you can't get out of bed, you got no desire to do anything for the day, I don't care how much money and stuff and whatever you got, it's just not worth it anymore.
Yeah.
So that was my primary thing.
That's a great point. It's all about quality of life. And so what is kind of a more typical day? You say zero carb, but just curious, is it, I know every day is different, but how many meals on average is it? About how much food are you eating? Is it 90% beef, 95% beef? How many bottles of wine? Let's
hit the important points first. How many bottles of wine? As many as I can before I pass out. No, look, I do way more than I should, but this is my prerogative. So this is not a prescription for anyone else. And I don't tell anyone to do as I do, not as I say kind of thing. I stand by that low human interference post that I wrote forever ago that says pretty much 90% of what I need to say. But the point being, okay, so yeah, to contextualize that is nowadays, yeah, I'm 95% meat and quite often, weeks without ever seeing a bloody vegetable on or anything like that. But I'm also a social creature. So I go out to things. I go out to quiz nights. I go to friends' places. Tomorrow night, I'm supposed to be going to Taco Tuesday at a friend's place. And look, I might have a taco, wow. And the next day my knee might blow out a little bit and it's terrible, I know. And everyone will be like, oh, you're not a real carnivore. But whatever. It's, I don't really give a shit what everyone else thinks. It's like I've been through several months of doing, really strict stuff. And for the most part, for my whole life, it's been mostly meat. It's just the occasional bits and pieces of here and there. And I know what ruins me. And I've got a pretty good idea of what would ruin most other people too.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. And I guess what you talked about the gout. What other health benefits have you realized over the course of eating this way? I know it's hard to put a time frame on it. But what would you say are improvements you see, or a way to phrase it differently is if you go off the diet and have more of kind of those optional pleasure foods, what changes?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, obviously the weight thing I'm not really concerned about anymore. Like, I was, off the top of my head, sorry, I can't do the math right now. It's pretty late here. But yeah, I was 102 kilos. Nowadays, I don't know what I am. But it's a lot less than that, and, you know, a bit more than I should be, but, you know, less than I could be. Just because of the other stuff. But so, yeah, that's the major thing that a lot of people focus on, but that's my last issue because I know exactly how to fix that. And it's just like, yeah, don't eat carbs, dickhead. But yeah, so if I have even just a piece of bread or something at some random thing, then yeah, my ankle or my knee or something will start aching the next day. I'll just get that bloated feeling and you don't want to do anything and all that sort of thing. And you just general joints start aching. There's this other really weird one that came up at one stage where I realized my skin is smooth. This was back in about 2010, 2011. I grew up with, I don't know, it wasn't really a problem to say per se. Just there was this what is it, ketonoric? No. I'll say the word wrong. I can't remember. But yeah, anyway, there's these little bumps that you get on the back of your triceps and shoulder, which a lot of people have, and it's not a problem, but it's just one of those things that you just realize, that's not there anymore. And other stuff is like, I used to be like, I'm not redhead, dark head, well, salt and pepper nowadays. But I grew up being unable to be in the sun for more than a few minutes at a time. You know, we were doing a lot of the bread and margarine kind of stuff. And yeah, I used to get a lot of headaches and things like that. Nowadays, I can go out and get a tan, which is really weird. Yeah.
Yeah. And how about mental health wise? Do you find a lot more clarity when you're eating well this way?
I can't really comment much on that. Like I know all the research and I've seen all the anecdotal stuff and whatnot, but it's not made really much of a difference for me. I mean, because there's no such thing as me going full SAD for long terms of time. Like the worst I'll ever do pretty much is a mate comes around and we play soccer on lower feet, soccer. I'm talking not American. We play soccer on the PlayStation and we'll have a pizza, blah, blah, blah. You know, that's like once every few months kind of thing. And so I don't sit there and have pizza every day. I don't have donuts. I don't have sandwiches. Like I said, okay. All right. You asked my general day-to-day thing. Yeah, my general day-to-day thing. I don't eat breakfast. I don't eat lunch. Like, I'm not saying this is an everyday thing, but it's probably 6 days a week. I just have one meal a day, and probably 2 or 3 days a week I just don't eat. I don't need to, because if you've seen any of the photos that I put up on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, you'll see that I eat a huge amount of meat in one hit, and then it's just like, I don't think about food anymore.
Yeah, I love your food porn posts, Ash. They're great, very inspiring, and mouthwatering. And can you talk about some of the experiments you've done and what you've learned? I'm thinking in terms of your steak month, experiments testing ketones, experiments with alcohol.
Okay, sure. I might forget each one of those because I've got a bit of a story with each, but so feel free to remind me if I don't elaborate. But yeah, so the first one you mentioned was steak month. And this wasn't so much an experiment of any necessity at all. It was like I'd already been doing a lot of eating meat before that, but I just met this new girl. And anyway, I just had this idea that I wanted to, someone said, that's right. Okay. I remember someone said, oh, if you eat steak every day, you're going to get sick of it, aren't you? I was like, okay.
Game on.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I can't just go, no. You know what I mean? I can't say no because I've not tried it. So this is the Dave Keto, whatever it is. I think that's his Twitter handle. I'm sure you know of him. He's my hero at the moment.
Dave Feldman.
Yeah, that guy. All the stuff he does to his body for the steaks. I freaking love it. And I really think that, a lot of stuff is going to come out of this and we're going to look back and go, thanks, Dave. So anyway, yeah, back at the day, this was 2012. I'd long since already been eating steak pretty much all the freaking time anyway. But yeah, someone goes, oh, you couldn't eat steak every day. And I was like, yeah, okay. Challenge accepted. And so I did, except for one day when I just could not physically get steak because of circumstances. And I got to the end of it and was like, you know what? I'm not sick of steak. I had steak every day, and sometimes 3 times a day I had steak. Yeah, that was great. I don't think it was a very scientific experiment, I guess, except that it was much better than the FFQs, like the food frequency questionnaires that you hear about in all the damn epidemiology studies and such like. I recorded every single gram of stuff that I put in my face. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see at the end of that sort of the totals in terms of steak, alcohol, butter, fish, everything, and then see you divide it by average daily consumption and all your charts. And then at the end, I think your conclusion was like you lost a little bit of weight, you felt way better, you intentionally overate on many occasions. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, could have been. I've done a few of those, so I can't remember exactly which one you're talking about, but yeah, there was the one with specifically I had steak every single day that I could. And it was only missed one day, but yeah, I think the one you might be referring to, if you go to I think it's highstakes.com/calories, I made an infographic based on the old. There's this huge biochemistry chart. Bill Lagakos, I think he said he had it as his poster on his wall when he was doing his pre-med or whatever it was, PhD. And it's just hilarious when someone comes in and the calories in, calories out, and they go, yeah, that's all that matters. And it's like, dude, have you seen the other stuff that happens between when you eat it and when you poop it or sweat it or do whatever with it? And it's like, if you say calories, you don't know what you're talking about pretty much. So,
yeah, it's a hilarious infographic, and for folks who haven't seen it, I'll link to it, but it's an interactive biochemical pathways map, and it just says it has these thousands of pathways, and then it's just calories in, and then in the middle, unimportant magics, calories out.
I'm glad you're very familiar with it.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's hilarious. And Ash, how about with alcohol? I know you've written a lot about this, alcohol, ketosis, alcohol on a zero carb diet. What are some of your findings from that?
Oh, well, I think some of the stuff that I keep trying to get across is that wine is fine. Like this, I've been fighting against this for so long that everything on the internet says, every glass of wine you have is basically just sugar and fruit juice. And it's like, no, it's not. And look, I want to preface this by sort of saying that I'm not saying you must or should drink wine and stuff, but I want the people who are wine aficionados or even enjoy their wine to not be afraid of it from a ketotic standpoint. Because, okay, this is my go-to line about it, is that, look, if your intake of wine is having an effect on your ketosis goals, whatever, then maybe you should rethink your wine intake, not like the alcohol intake overall, not the sugar of the wine, because that's just not a thing.
Yeah. And do you think people, is that what you mostly see, is people fearing the sugar itself? Or do you see, I mean, some people like, I just think of like Dr. Ted Naiman just says alcohol is a toxin. You should probably try to minimize it because it makes it, your body has to metabolize it first. It has to burn it off before it can burn your own body fat, things like that. It's sometimes less about the ketosis aspect, but curious to hear what do you think of that?
I don't want to reflect on Ted's views there.
Yeah, not Ted necessarily, but just curious, like if it's the sugar itself that's the problem, or if people are citing other issues.
Yeah, so let's leave Ted out of this for now. We can talk about him later. The thing where the whole like blah blah, it's like you have to metabolize alcohol before you can do this other stuff and blah blah. It's such bullshit. It's like people think that all these different, I don't know, molecules are lining up in the liver to get their turn to be metabolized, and it's not like that at all. So this all happens at the same time. So it's all an asynchronous process, and I don't know why we can't get past this, but this is part of the reason I've given up on all that. Like, I've said my piece, and it's just, there's no such, okay, here's the fun part. Right, whenever someone says, "Oh yeah, no, alcohol is metabolized first because it's a toxin," yada yada, and then in the same breath you'll hear someone say, "Oh, glucose is the most important, energy source because it's metabolized first." I'm like, well, what is the most important in that case? I think alcohol is the most important in front of glucose. Or how do we flip the script? Is it alcohol is the most toxin, most toxic toxin, whatever, and glucose is the next most toxic, and then fat, because that's metabolized last, that's the least toxic. This is how do you put this?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think I'll also link to some of your posts, Ash, because you've articulated this so many times and in so many different ways. And I just want folks who are interested in this, which people are always interested in alcohol. So, I want them to be able to dive even deeper into the great research you've done.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. It's like, a lot of my stuff is really dispersed throughout posts on the internet and all that sort of crap. There's people like is it Michael Goldstein, Bitstein, whatever. Anyway, he's a co-collaborator on Keto Science. He's putting together a really great resource and things like that I can no longer be bothered to do with high stakes and stuff like that. So yeah. If he can do all that, then great.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about it a little bit, but just to put a finer point on it, calories and weight loss, should we pay attention to them at all?
And I think it's just like a running joke for me, personally. Whenever I use the word calories, I put them in quotes, because it's the worst thing. I know I've got a post out there somewhere that just sort of says we should relegate calories back to just a theory, because they've never been proven. You can look up me and Zoe Harcombe, and also this goes back to that Knowles with the G.org guy. where we were discussing this long ago. We were trying to find where a calorie was a pound of, fat was actually determined to be at 3,500 calories, and we can't find it. It doesn't exist. Someone just made it up, and it's out there. Maybe something has happened. Like this was 5 years ago, whatever. But it was just hilarious going through. No one can actually define it, what it is and how much it is. And there was this one time I put this post up. I think might have been Reddit, yeah, whatever. And I was using MFP, my Fitness Pal at the time, tracking everything that I stuffed in my face. And I put 3 strips of bacon. There were something like 17, 18 different examples of what 3 strips of bacon were worth.
Wow.
And put it up and said, okay, if anyone can tell me how many calories I'm putting in my mouth and how many steps I need to take to defeat the bacon, then go ahead. And it's just like, nobody knows this stuff. You cannot do it. It's so dumb.
Yeah, I agree. It's mostly a complete waste of time. And you talked about mostly only eating dinner, fasting multiple days a week. This might be a bit of a rabbit hole, but I guess, what do you think about the whole meal timing, circadian rhythms? And I know you're friends with and have a friendly kind of academic debate relationship with Bill Lagakos sometimes. Can you talk about sort of how you think about those things? I know he's a huge fan of early time restricted feeding and starting your day with food. But of course that's harder socially. And I've struggled with this and gone back and forth, but just curious how you think about all that.
Yeah, no, that's a cool question. Cause we've gone back and forth on this a lot of times. We had all our conversations mostly back 2011 or 2013 sort of era. And I think, Bill Lagakos and, I know whatever you're going to think, but, Jack, Cruz, they know a lot more about this sort of stuff than I do. I know what works for me, and that's what it comes down to is like, this is what I give a shit about. So yes, circadian rhythm is super important, but who knows is what it comes down to is nobody knows exactly what anything to do with that means. I track my sleep meticulously. I do all this stuff. I try to keep my blue light down as much as I can. I go outside and, as Jack Cruz would say back in 2012, point your nose toward the stars and get some photons up in your business, all that sort of thing. I don't wear my sunnies unless I have to. Well, I wear my sunnies inside more than I do outside nowadays. But it's just, so I understand all that sort of stuff. Well, I don't understand it. I won't say that I'm a guru on any of that. I'm very well read of all the people who claim to be gurus. So that's what I'll say about that. Circadian biology, sorry, you were going to interject?
No, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, so the whole circadian rhythm stuff and things like that, I don't know. It comes down to the person, I guess. So I'm very biphasic, or maybe biphasic curious, whatever. But yeah, multiphasic at least, as in I rarely sleep more than 3 to 4 hours, and then I'm up for a while, then I can sleep for a few more hours, and then I'm up and good to go, like, ready to tackle the world. But a lot of people are different. But the thing is, if I get up, have a big fuck off breakfast, pound away, a kilo of bacon, like Jack Cruz might tell you to do first thing in the morning, I will just be sleepy all day. Whereas I get up in the morning and do nothing, if I'm still, 16 to 24 hours fasted, that's when I start coming into my peak period of come at me, bro, kind of thing. And then toward the end of the night, when I'm starting to get sleepy, I'm having a couple wines, fill my face with meat, and bam, I'm ready for a good hard sleep.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think people are really different. And I think the science is starting to reveal some things like, some people can eat a huge meal 2 hours before bed and it helps their sleep, and others are the exact opposite, makes them toss and turn and they're trying to digest the food. So I definitely don't think it's black and white.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I don't think anyone knows. There's, we've got, it's kind of like a foggy, when we had the Hubble telescope and someone had to go and scrub it so we could see into the distance a bit. It was a bit foggy. We don't know yet.
Yeah. And Ash, you say you're really interested in sleep. Do you find I mean, I just personally find when I drink wine, I haven't had any alcohol in a few years, but when I did, I would always wake up in the middle of the night and have a really hard time getting back to sleep. Do you find it affects your sleep, or do you feel like at this point you've just become so accustomed to it that it's just kind of like the normal?
Look, let's not personalize this stuff because
Sure.
This is me. Like, if anyone wants to read into this, it's because they just want to know more about me, which if they want, they can reach out to me. But
okay,
I can't give advice unless you want advice on what it's like to be sort of a frequent drinker and sleeping. I can sort of say that, look, sometimes it affects, sometimes it doesn't. And that's the thing. Anyway, what I can do is I can actually publish my sleep journal, and I record, the time I went to sleep, where I went to bed, the amount of time it took me to get to sleep. Like I'm pretty good at figuring that out now because, I don't even try to go to sleep until I'm actually really ready to. There's no point because, back in the day when you had your mum say, oh yeah, no, fat cat's going to bed. So you have to go to bed and you sit there for 3 hours staring at the ceiling. Nowadays it's like, oh no, my head is nodding. Bam, that's the cue for me to go to sleep. So it's either on the sofa, on the floor, or in bed, whatever. And I also record what I consider my drunkenness percentage to be, and then I record the time that I wake up. I record how long I feel it was between the time of waking up and how many minutes it was until I was lucid. And then I also record. I rate my quality of sleep between 0 and 10. So I do this every single day.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think people would love to see that data, even though it's super individual. But you should definitely publish a post on that. That would be super fascinating.
Because I do think it's really important. Like above, I would actually say almost above all, diet and rhythms and all this sort of stuff, sleep is the number one factor that decides whether you're having a good day or a fuck day. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel that above all. It's amazing how much it can affect your quality of life. The way you put it is very elegant. And
I wouldn't say elegant, but whatever.
To the point. It's very to the point. And how about fat to protein ratios? I know you've talked about this, written about it a bit. Can you just talk about what you found, why it might matter, why it might not at all, and why it might be smart to add fat to your meals versus just eating lean meat?
Okay. You might have seen me basically, this was years ago. I've basically flipped tables when I keep getting the, fat to protein ratio BS thrown at me. And it's just, I hate to go to the naturalistic fallacy stuff, but I just try to get good quality fatty meat and not have to add fat to it. Like, I love just putting on, let's say everyone goes about the ribeye, but that is pretty much perfect there. And same with a lamb, which isn't a big thing in the USA, but whatever. But I also love making sauces and being a bit of a, a wonder in the kitchen kind of thing, just because it's fun. But yeah, so the fat protein ratio stuff. There's this one tweet I think that went around everywhere, and it pretty much summed up my thing from some time ago, where I said I feel like I'm in the dumbest position ever, in that all the I know it's politically incorrect to say it now, but all the keytards are saying, oh no, you gotta limit your protein, otherwise you get kicked out of keto stuff. And I'm like, no, eat all the protein as much as you want. And then there's the other guys who are just the lose weight crowd, basically, or I'll get into the other stuff later if we need to. But yeah, and they're saying, no, limit your fat because reasons. I'm like, no, eat all the fat. I'm just like, eat everything of the meats. Like, stop it. And then you got the other people who are just, if you're eating all the fat and the meat, what about the liver and the brains and the marrow? And yes, eat everything. If you have an entire animal in front of you, eat the whole damn thing as much as you can. But so my general go-to on that sort of stuff is basically eat as much of the fat as you can stomach when you first get there, because it's super tasty. That's the tastiest part when you first start eating. Like, just picture a massive steak in front of you and it's got a big fat cap on the side of it. That's the tastiest part when you first get to it, but it starts getting a bit non-palatable about halfway through the steak, and that's when you start going for the actual meaty stuff, to really fill you up. And it's going to be different for everyone, but there's this thing that I sort of pioneered way back in the day, but I don't think it ever caught on, called fat loading.
Cholesterol loading.
Oh no, cholesterol loading is a different thing. That was just me being a dickhead, making like omelets out of nothing but 12 egg yolks. So the fat loading thing was because I kept on hearing people talk about, like, this was early on in the keto days, like a subreddit keto, and they were going on about I'm not satisfied. I'm not full. And I was like, yeah, I think we need some real distinction between the words fullness and satiety, because people are mixing them up. Like, they're used to having like a mac and cheese and chips and Coke and all that sort of stuff, and they would just be full and like, I don't feel really good anymore. Like, that's fullness, right? Whereas satiety is completely different. And so I was trying to pioneer the concept of just eating nothing but fat for an entire meal, like say 400 grams, say a pound of pure pork fat. I can send you links later to my posts. They're a bit broken now. And just eat until you're absolutely astonished at what you are trying to do, and you're going, oh, this is terrible. And you start, like, dry reaching in your mouth going, I can't have another bite because this is pure fat. But anyway, the point being is that after you stuff all this stuff down your gullet, it's like you are utterly satisfied for a day or two. The idea of food is just completely repulsive to, and it's different from, you know, when you have a whole bunch of pizza and stuff like that. You have some, you feel really crap. It's like, oh, that pizza, I can still eat some.
Yeah.
But if it's a plate of fat, you fill up and you're like, nah, I don't want any more.
Yeah, and you touched on it there, Ash, but why might it be a bad idea to, if you're trying to lose weight, or if you're on keto, just saying, hey, I'm just going to lever down the fat, keep my protein super high. What problems might folks run into if they start to do that in theory?
Okay. So I don't think it's a bad thing. It's totally fine to just go super high protein for a while. But if you're doing it and completely ignoring all your signals of needing that food and stuff like that, you're going to get a lot of diarrhea. Things like, well, that's not the worst part. But the thing is, it's okay to lose weight on PSMF, so protein sparing modified fast and stuff like that. That's fine. And it's probably good up to 2 to 4 weeks, I guess. But it's you want to do it as very much a prescribed kind of diet. I don't think it's something you just like go, oh, I'm just going to eat protein for a while and see what happens. Because if you're cutting off all the fat, which is basically the stuff that helps all the, what we call them, you know, I still put them in quote marks, vitamins and all that sort of stuff. But yeah. Sorry, I think I really meandered there.
No, that's great. I think you made a great point, which is starting with fat can really help you reach satiety sooner, and that's important. And it may also be essential at some point for vitamin absorption, air quotes vitamins. And how about, I'm just curious, this is kind of a sidebar question, but
oh yeah, sorry, I would absolutely defer to Ted Naiman on the PSMF. I think he's got a P2OR ratio website or something, which is really great. It's not my kind of stuff, but he's the top of the game in this sort of thing. So yeah, I don't think it's a total lifestyle choice. I think it's like an intervention is what I would call high protein, low fat.
Yep, that's a great way to put it. And I love Ted Naiman. I've been trying to get him on the show for pretty much since inception. But yeah, I'll definitely link to that in the show notes too. His protein and energy calculator and stuff like that. And just kind of a thing you brought up, Ash, is I know at least in your food posts, you're always eating egg yolks and not the whites. Can you talk about why?
Sure. I'm just not a fan. It's not a prescribed thing or anything like that. I like when my egg yolks are a little bit burnt when I fry them and stuff like that. But sorry, no, I mean the whites there, the albumin. But for the most part, I just love egg yolk, and there's no reason behind it apart from that's what I prefer.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's definitely the most delicious part. And I've been adding a lot of raw egg yolks on top of my steaks lately. Which is
that is all. This is Oh, yeah, you just covered it. And I think egg yolk and bone marrow are the two nature's most perfect steak sources.
Absolutely. And I guess one thing that you've been up to lately is comically and systematically tearing down various diets and dogma. Can you talk a little bit about, I think most alarming is where keto is and how it's being kind of commercialized. I think there's still a ton of people getting benefit from it. I want to be totally fair. But Can you talk about some of the problems with kind of the commercialization of keto and any concerns you have about how carnivore as a movement and as a diet is kind of developing and what you see online?
Yeah. So let's preface this. I think you already gave a bit of a caveat there in that everything that is happening right now and in the last 5 or so years is fucking great because more people are hearing about it, more people know about it, and so that's the difference actually that I want to stipulate is that more people know about it, not just hear about it as from some Sentinel Sun or whatever bloody paper, but people are researching this stuff and they're figuring out that it's like, holy shit, this isn't a load of crap, that we've been talking about I've been copying this for a lot of years. It's like, oh, you're one of those people who just eats meat, what? So, you know what I
mean? Yeah.
So that's the whole preface to this is that, I'm super happy that all of this is getting out. But I'm also kind of like, well, I would kind of want to retire from it. But yeah, so we got the proponents, the cheerleaders. No, that's a bad term. Anyway, the superheroes like Sean Baker and whatnot are coming out and just they're basically taking the bullet storm for the rest of us who have been slowly building up this mountain over the last decade or so. Like Charles Washington, obviously. I'm sure you know of him, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. He's a hero in zero carb community.
Right, because we go back, way back, to when we used to talk about all this stuff, and it just seems so silly now talking about it when it's just, I don't know, it's out it seems to be in the mainstream. But yeah, Kelly Williams Hogan, I think, in 2015, I think that's what I think of as the turning point for, going, where keto was becoming big to carnivore started, like, for a mainstream thing.
Yes.
Because there was this big post it's like, it focused on the difference between keto and carnivore and just how, people were like, oh, what's the difference if I just have a little bit of, bread or a little bit of carbs here and there, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, there's actually, when you're getting down to those levels and you actually have this, I really, really hate using this term, but hashtag healing. Right. When you've got stuff that's actually like really wrong with you, that's interrupting the joy of your life, basically, eliminate everything that is doing this stuff to you. And that's what she did. And it was like, it goes from even, your allowance of 30 grams of carbs a day to be like, oh, wow. This is way better. And that's what I mean. I'm not prescribing anything to anyone because I'm not near that now. Like I do that quite often, but it's just some people really need it to understand what the difference is between low carb and zero carb. It's huge.
Yeah. It's amazing the stories that are coming out of people switching, and I think it's so important. You tread this line really well, Ash, to not make it a dogma, but to make it clear to people that despite it not being dogmatic and not saying you're not carnivore because you had a piece of onion or a piece of garlic, there are people who will experience exponentially better health and better benefits when they go from some carbs, even less than 30 grams, to zero. And that's not a part of being in the carnivore club and getting your carnivore card. That's not why you experience those benefits, but it's worth experimenting with and worth trying.
Yeah. So, what it comes down to there, it's not, it's not a popularity thing like anymore, as in like you aren't doing this for the sake of becoming homecoming queen and all that sort of thing. We're talking about your own health, your own life, your own vitality, all this sort of stuff to make your life better and the people around you's life better because you're a better person, all that sort of crap. So, this is where I'm like, you can hear my other stuff there that I'm talking about where, yeah, do what fits your lifestyle. But my caveat is do the most extreme to eliminate all the problems that you might have first. So it's if you try to do it on a small scale and just I won't eat this donut today and see if I feel better tomorrow. Like it takes longer than that. You need to, let's put it in air quotes, you need to sacrifice for a bit just to get your life on track. If you don't do that, I don't know. Well, that's up to you. Anyway, so let's go back. There was a post, I think 2012, maybe 2013. Yeah. L. Amber O'Han, I'm sure you've probably had her on the podcast. I don't know. Yep. I was cited anyway. I sort of semi-helped a little bit, but she did all of the work. Put together the thing of eat meat, mostly fat, blah, blah, not too little. And it was a disturbance of Michael Pollan's quote of, eat plants, or eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And we were like, no, this doesn't make sense. So anyway, yeah, she put that together. I'm not sure if it's still up on the site. I think it was ketotic.org at the time. And yeah, it's just basically a very simple thing of just trying to distill down to how you just get in touch with what the hell you're putting in your face. So the post basically came down to, look, you're not going to die in these 30 days. Okay, this is not medical advice. Yeah, you're not going to die in 30 days if you eliminate everything except for meat and water for that time, and then see if what the effects are, and then start reintroducing stuff that fits your lifestyle. And that's sort of where it comes down to. I still recommend that post if it's still there.
Yeah, it's on Empira.com.
Oh, Empira.com. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Not eat meat, not too little, mostly fat, and I'll link to that in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
This has been absolutely great, Ash. I really appreciate you taking the time. I think folks will enjoy this a ton, partly because you don't do many interviews, and I know a lot of people follow you. Where can people who don't know follow you on social media, find some of your work? And of course, I'll link to all of it in the show notes again.
Honestly, I'm kind of winding down my social media presence. So just Twitter, high stakes. That's it.
Great. Well, thanks again for your time today, Ash, and hope you have a great night.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Carnivore Cast. If you enjoyed this episode, please review on iTunes. It really helps us out. And share it with a friend. What questions would you like answered, or who would you like to hear from in the carnivore research community? You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Carnivore Cast, or go to carnivorecast.com. You can also email me at info@carnivorecast.com. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep it carnivore.